Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. Heck, even some women's college volleyball fans around the country and around the world. I can mess that up, awesome, but you know where I'm going with that. Austin Ward, my able-bodied co-pilot, joining me once again in the cockpit of this magnificent Tim May podcast. Welcome again, Austin.
My pleasure to be here.
I called you by your call sign there earlier, but I don't want to make anybody mad. You know I am, man. I like to step on eggshells and not crack them. What do you think about
that? Works for me.
Kind of like in that press conference the other day with Ryan Day, when everybody's kind of kept asking the same question. Hey, how are you got to fix this physical situation you got yourself into at the end of the year, et cetera? I think Ohio State playing Utah in the Rose Bowl does present quite the challenge, right? To see if they can step back in there and throw haymakers with another team that prides itself on being physical.
Yeah, it definitely does. We talked about that on Sunday. Just it's a little bit take some pieces from Michigan, take some pieces from Oregon, take some pieces from the Minnesota game, and then see what you spit out in the Rose Bowl. I think that there will be a lot of people that want to make judgments on that. If Ohio State got it fixed, if they can get it fixed. I mean, also depends on if everybody even plays, how much they care about proving that point against Utah. And
yeah,
they may say we don't, and it's development, or maybe a bunch of players who opt out and who don't want to participate in it. Like I would caution that I think the matchup is great. It's been very cool to see these teams at full strength and with something on the line, but that's unfortunately kind of the way that stuff like the Rose Bowl and non-playoff stuff works anymore. And I think that's probably why this expansion train is not slowing down. When you can't even say Ohio State 10-win season, Rose Bowl, play a Pac-12 champion, it's like, well, then you probably created a problem for yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's I don't know. I don't think that is. I talked to Rex Kern about that, by the way. My guest this week, along with you, I've got Bill Bender from the Sporting News, my irregular guest on this show. Comes on enough to almost call him regular, if you follow my drift. But we talk about the national scene, about Ohio State and its challenge of playing Utah, and about, did the committee get the Final Four right? Well, I mean, they didn't really have to do much after Oklahoma State got beat, and everybody else won. The decisions were pretty much out of their hands. But then I've got Rex Kern talking about his book, The Road to the Horseshoe and Beyond, and we get into some stories, some Woody Hayes stories, but also where this fabled, you're not fabled if you did it right. This legendary, I guess it's not legendary if you did it right. This factual, basically Ohio State legend Rex Kern talks about the current state of college football, where it's headed and whether he's worried about it, but what you just mentioned there with the Rose Bowl, for want of another term, becoming almost a consolation prize. Are you kidding me? But it is what it is in this modern era. We touch, of course, on the Quinn Ewers exit. Quinn, we hardly knew you. And then I have Jen Flynn Oldenburg, the coach of the Ohio State women's volleyball team, which has moved to the regional semifinals this week at Louisville after sweeping 2 games in Columbus over the weekend in front of a jam-packed crowd at the Covelli Center. I mean, boy, interest is really high on the women's volleyball team at the moment. And, of course, Ohio State plays host to the women's Final Four in 2 weeks at Nationwide Arena. And Jen Flynn Oldenburg is hoping to steer her players to not only be in attendance, but to be active participants in the women's Final Four. It's kind of an exciting time for women's volleyball.
Without a doubt.
And but let's get back to my original premise of having my co-pilot on, who seems to have fallen asleep there. And I don't blame him. I mean,
I haven't watched.
I know you haven't, man.
I love. When I was in college, and it was one of my first beats was women's volleyball. It's an exciting sport, and I really loved it. And I enjoyed, getting to know, the coaches there, and they would, explain the stuff that I'd never played, and they were really helpful, and always they appreciated the coverage and the attention. It was great to be part of it. It is an exciting sport to watch. I wouldn't dispute any of what you said. I just haven't really been following those Lady Buckeyes on their run. So, I was going to defer to the actual pilot here.
There you go, man. Well, let's steer this thing through the thunderstorm here. Dude, real quick before we move on to my guest, I haven't had the opportunity of having you on. My probably only come up once a week now, but I'm telling you, the Quinn Ewers thing is just, I don't know. I think things sometimes work out for the best. You and I were talking about this thing in August. You remember the podcast I did about, boy, take a snapshot of this quarterback room. Are you ever going to see one like this again? And it didn't even last 4 months. Jack Miller has hit the transfer portal a week ago, and then Quinn Ewers followed him into the portal. But, I mean, it was a moment in time that couldn't last, right?
Yeah, and that's, sort of the way it works. If you're going to pursue the nation's best quarterbacks, and Ryan Day is not showing any inclination to stop his approach to find the best players and let them compete. And then if you have to reload, well, another one was waiting on Wednesday too. You had one in the portal on Sunday, one in the portal on Friday, and a commitment from another, pretty coveted guy, 4-star Devin Brown on Wednesday, right in the middle. Ohio State is always going to, as long as Ryan Day is around, as long as he's working with quarterbacks, it's hard to foresee him going into a season without enough to get through it. Now, some of the names may change more quickly than anybody would think or want or is used to, but he doesn't seem that concerned with the High Wire Act, and he has confidence in his ability to evaluate and develop when he gets those guys in, and that combine that with the brand recognition and the chance to get to the next level and compete for a Heisman Trophy, all those other things. Like, Ohio State has so much to offer, and most quarterbacks in the country know that, and they want to be part of it, even for a short time. I mean, Jack Miller gave 2 years. They weren't the 2 years that he expected, but he's not going to be hurting from having learned from Ryan Day and Corey Dennis and having worked with Mickey Marotti wherever he goes. That should only help him down the road. And that's kind of the way it works now with quarterbacks.
Hey, we finished our rapid reaction the other day after the Ryan Day press conference on Sunday, and Kyle McCord was sitting over there after we were done on a bench waiting, I think, to do a little workout. But I walked up to him and shook his hand, reintroduced myself again, because, you hardly ever get to see these guys. And I said, by the way, those who stay will be champions. Took a page out of another head coach's book from a long time ago, and it was reiterated. But the way it went down, I mean, there's no doubt Michigan was the best team in the Big Ten at the end of the year. Am I right about that?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Number two, are you excited in some respects to watch Cincinnati play Alabama and Michigan play Georgia?
He wouldn't like hearing this, but I'm a little bit fearful for Cincinnati, because Alabama seems to have found its footing as the season's gone. I mean, we're 2 weeks removed from a game that they should have lost against Auburn, but just, the personnel when they go match up. And I know that Luke has upgraded the talent there and has recruited well, and that Brady Collins is maximizing that Clifton Strong weight program for them down there. And I love all those guys, and it's a phenomenal story, and they've accomplished a lot. But it's hard for me to sit here and think that 1 through 85 that Cincinnati goes in there and is able to withstand that onslaught from Alabama. So, I mean, I would love to see a Cinderella run for those people. I will be supporting as much as I can. I would love to see that happen, a win. I mean, go make it happen. It couldn't happen to better people. It's just, I don't want to be one of these, negative people about the group of 5 teams, but their rosters are not built the same. And I know Luke was only just getting rolling a little bit when they played Ohio State a few years ago, but it was 42-0, and it could have been worse. I'm not suggesting that they haven't made progress to play a tighter game against a team of that caliber, but boy, what Alabama is doing, what they did to Georgia, that was quite the warning shot.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what Cincinnati did at Notre Dame in its one real showcase game this year, they dominated that game, especially in the second half. And I don't think they're out of their league, but, a league is made up of, a few teams. You know what I mean? You still may not be the Yankees yet. You know what I mean? That's from my old days growing up when the Yankees ruled supreme. Awesome. You don't remember those days, do you?
Hey, the Yankees have always had a lot of decades of dominance, so you can just pick one.
There you go. But, hey, you know what? I wanted to put the national scene in perspective. and kind of like, and just get Bill Bender's view on Ohio State and, the Rose Bowl and et cetera. My first guest, Bill Bender from the Sporting News, locally, lives here locally, but he keeps an eye on the national scene like few others do, and get his perspective. And we'll come back with my conversation with Rex Kern and then my conversation with Jen Flynn Oldenburg. Try saying that 3 times in a row, man. I always get the Flynn and the Jen and everything mixed up, but she's done a hell of a job with the Ohio State women's volleyball team. But first, let's get to my conversation with Bill Bender. Bill Bender, welcome back to the Tim May podcast. I had to get your reactions, man, to what did and basically didn't happen over the weekend in the college football playoff. By the way, welcome back.
Hey, Tim. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I love having my regular guest on. It was a weekend of chaos. The only game that mattered that I think really played significance in the Final Four was Baylor beating Oklahoma State, which basically paved the way for Cincinnati to get into that Final Four as expected, no matter what else went on during the weekend. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and the most dramatic finish, arguably, of the year. I mean, to have Oklahoma State not be able to put the ball in the end zone, open up the door for a Big 12 champion to get in, a lot of turnovers they could not overcome, and good for Baylor and Dave Aranda. But, I mean, after that, once Alabama beat Georgia, there was no drama Sunday. There was nobody like, maybe this team gets in, and that's what the Oklahoma State loss did. It eliminated all the drama.
Yeah, I think the word you were looking there for was it went chalk.
Right.
Do you like this Final Four? Do you like Alabama number 1? Do you like Michigan number 2? Would you have flip-flopped those? I mean, just what's your take on that? Obviously, Georgia 3 and the University of Cincinnati, the first non-Power 5 team, Group of 5 team to make the college football playoff. That's redundant. But do you like the way the thing finally settled out?
No, I think this is a year where we don't necessarily need an 18 playoff because the 4 teams that earn their way in are in. Cincinnati beat Notre Dame. Michigan beat Ohio State. Alabama beat Georgia. Now they let them both in, but Georgia had been the best team the entire regular season. There was a case to be made for Michigan at 1, but I think when you look at Alabama's resume compared to those, it's pretty similar, and their losses are pretty similar, and their biggest win, Alabama's, is a little bit bigger by beating Georgia. So 1, 2, 3, 4, good storylines, good playoff, a little bit of fresh blood in there. It should be fun.
Yeah, the only thing I would argue was I thought Michigan had the better last 3 games of the season than Alabama did. Alabama struggled to beat a mediocre Auburn team. Literally, Auburn blew it, more than anything else. And that would have really upset the apple cart. And then they stepped back and they do to Georgia. They scored, I think, almost as many points on Georgia has been scored on Georgia all year. I'm being a little facetious there, but they did finish with a bang. And but so did Michigan. Michigan beat the number 2 team in the country the week before, and then beat Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. In my opinion, they had the 2 more impressive wins at the end. What do you think about that? I'm talking about as a group of 2. Yeah.
Yep. Those last 2 games, really, really outstanding performances by Michigan. I thought the Iowa game would be a little tighter because of the way Iowa plays and the way they drove down the field on the opening drive, and then they missed the field goal. And I kind of thought, well,
yeah,
that was their opportunity, as strange as it sounds. But Michigan was impressive on both sides. I'm really interested to see what they do with Georgia. Because as you and I have seen a lot of SEC Big Ten matchups and bowl games, and some have been lopsided, some have had big-time surprises. And I'm wondering, everybody's assuming Georgia's just going to run them over, and they may very well do that. But I've learned, in some of these spots, when you have those big-time programs, you never know.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, just the chaos that's ensued in the coaching ranks. And I think chaos is the right word when a head coach at Notre Dame leaves and goes to LSU, and the head coach at Oklahoma leaves and goes to USC. You know what I'm talking about? From one blue blood to another. I don't know, Bill. What do you make of what's happened so far in this coaching carousel? It's kind of nuts, isn't it?
Craziest so far. I've never seen anything like it, and I'm sure I don't know if you have. When you think about it, Brian Kelly leaving and going to LSU, and obviously everything that's come with that, I think it's a great hire for LSU. And I think Notre Dame did the right thing and hired Marcus Freeman, a former Ohio State linebacker, very young, very enthusiastic coach. And if you'd have told me that Marcus Freeman was going to be Notre Dame's coach when they open at Ohio State next year, at the beginning of this year, I would have said, what are we talking about here? How did we get there? And of course, the path is very interesting that we did. And I like Lincoln Riley at USC. I think he restores that brand. I think it takes a little bit of time, but really good for him. I don't think he ducks the SEC with this move. I just think he took the better opportunity for him.
Well, when somebody comes at you, supposedly waiting at your door when you get back from getting your rear end beaten by Oklahoma State, and according to his story, entice you to take their job in 8 hours or less. By the way, I don't believe any of that. I mean, I believe that maybe the first time they made eyeball contact was that, but something had to be in the works. But that's just me. But wow, yeah, it does speak volumes. But the funny thing is, I look at it as he's running away from a major challenge, which is Oklahoma playing in the SEC, and Brian Kelly's running to a major challenge, which is taking over Louisiana State, playing in the SEC. Clearly, he doesn't need to work on his Southern accent. He needs to forget about having a Southern accent. Okay. But to me, that made more sense maybe than what Lincoln Riley did, only because I'm talking about Brian Kelly wants that challenge at LSU, that maybe that possibility of having both a great offensive line and a great defensive line in the same year, which is really tough to do at Notre Dame with some of its recruiting restrictions, et cetera. But I don't know, what's your take on my take there?
No, once you get past all the Southern accent, the way he left Notre Dame abruptly, all those things that are.
Hey, well, let me interrupt you though. There's no easy way to do that. Right. When you think about it, go ahead.
Right. He can say goodbye and that's it. I mean, you're exactly right. So, and all the personality hit pieces on BK, he's still a really good coach.
Yeah.
He's an outstanding coach. And I think he's going to be able to recruit well there. And his personality isn't for everybody, but he's had a lot of pretty good and very good players walk through the door at Notre Dame. And Cincinnati. And I think he'll do a good job at LSU, but the stakes have been raised. I mean, he has to win a national title now. At Notre Dame, I think we all kind of looked at him, Tim, like he's done a fantastic job, and we could use the recruiting restrictions as a reason why they couldn't win at all. He won't have that luxury at LSU. They expect to win it every year. They just ran off a coach who won it 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Bingo. That's what I said. Since Charlie McClendon, man, coaches have had a hard time sticking around there. Even Nick Saban, moved on to the NFL from there fairly quickly when you look at it, from a timeline standpoint. And so, we'll see what he can do there. Last thing, Brent Venables going from Clemson to Oklahoma. Well, what's just your take on that one?
Well, I think, he'll obviously he knows the terrain. He spent a long time with Bob Stoops. You said this is a program that needs to get ready for the SEC. He's coached against SEC teams. One thing that I thought he would be an interesting head coach candidate is he recruits very well in Florida. If you look at the track record of Clemson prospects from Florida that he recruited, he does a really good job there. And they're going to need that to win in the SEC. You need defense. You need 4- and 5-star talent from the southern states, from Florida, Georgia, Alabama. Well, it's basically what we watched Saturday. First thing I texted my buddy when Georgia and Alabama were playing, watched about 5-10 plays. I was like, man, look at all the talent on this field. It's amazing to watch. And that's what they're going to have to bring to Norman to have a chance.
Yeah. Hey, I know I said last question, but you live in Pickerington, Ohio, but you cover the national scene. Heck, you're international with the sporting news. Let's put it that way, Bill. Where would you classify this Ohio State season, looking at it from an objective point of view, looking at it from 30,000 feet? I don't know. Where would you compartmentalize it? Like I've got Rex Kern on this podcast, and I'm talking about it's really funny now that the Rose Bowl has become a consolation prize in this new era, of college football. I'm not sure I like this new era, but I don't know. Where would you put it? Give it a B? Would you give it a B minus? Where would you stick it?
And it's not often they lose 2 regular season games, but I mean, that's part of it. Rex, another Lancaster guy. So you've got two Lancaster guys on this podcast today. And
yes.
Rex was just a tad bit better at football than me. He's actually around my late father's age. So Rex is the best. I hope that conversation was awesome.
Yes.
He's one of my favorites. He's a Lancaster legend, no doubt. But he'll tell you the same thing. I mean, the Rose Bowl, still the Rose Bowl. It's, it will feel for some like a consolation prize playing in that game. It shouldn't. I think they got to go out, take care of business against Utah, build momentum for next season. We talked about the defense last week. But it 11-2, if that's your bad year, look, Alabama had one of those 2 years ago. They lost 2 regular season games late in the year. And since then they've bounced back and they've won a national title, and they're on the cusp of what I think they're a good bet to win another one.
Does Cincinnati have a shot against Alabama?
Well, remember a couple weeks ago, I was talking about the checklist Michigan needed against the Buckeyes. Cincinnati's is probably significantly longer. Yeah. It is cool that we get to see Ahmad Gardner guard Jameson Williams.
Yes.
Luke will have him fired up. Luke's going to, take the blueprint he did against Georgia. The reason why they were able to stay in that Georgia game last year is they stopped the run. And if they can stop the run, I think they need 4 or 5 turnovers. And Alabama doesn't turn the ball over a lot. I think that's the biggest problem.
I don't know if you have a Heisman vote or not. I do. I'm not allowed to say who I'm voting for. Matter of fact, as soon as we get done recording this, I'm going to actually put my vote in. Who is your top 3, at least in the Heisman category?
I voted this morning, so I'm going to have to talk around this.
Yeah, I just said your top 3. There you go.
Well,
in no particular order.
I think the top 3 will end up being it depends on how you look at the award, right? So if you look at it like an MVP type guy, Kenny Pickett's Pitt's MVP. He was amazing this year. He led him to an ACC championship. He perfected a fake slide. Had a great year. I think he'll be a finalist. Bryce Young probably will win the Heisman.
Yeah, let's go top 4. Hey, let's go top 4 because there are probably at least 4 guys there, I'm thinking. But go ahead.
Yeah, Bryce Young probably win it. And then after that, I think if Matt Corral's not a finalist, I think it'll be C.J. Stroud and Aiden Hutchinson, which is you can take that either way. I mean, Stroud probably wins the Heisman if they win the Big Ten championship, but they didn't. Hutchinson got a lot of late momentum. He also had 9 sacks in their last 4 games in those big games. So I could see those 2 in New York. So I think the finalists will end up being Young, Pickett, Hutchinson, Stroud, maybe Corral.
Yeah. Last thing, Bill. I've already said that 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing, promise.
Yeah.
Just your reaction from a national scope standpoint of the Quinn Ewers, boy, we hardly knew you kind of situation, showing up at Ohio State in late August, leaving Ohio State in early mid-December, going back to the promised land, which is Texas, probably one of those schools there. Just what's your take on everything that went down in that whole situation? And like I said a while ago, I didn't say this a while ago, but is college football headed to hell in a handbasket? I'm trying to figure out what's going on here.
Well, I hope not. I think the way it's recruited has been changed. NIL has changed everything. It's crazy to think that you had a 5-star quarterback never throw a pass, that it wasn't in maybe warm-ups, and then he's going to go to either Texas A&M, Texas Tech. I don't know that the sport has gone to hell. I think it's just gone through so many changes so fast that the corrections will come. I think the transfer portal makes it tough. If I'm a college football coach, the roster management end of it's got to be really difficult. We've heard Ryan Day talk a lot about that here locally. And if I was an elite college football coach, I would almost think in some ways the NFL is easier, dealing with those things that you don't have to deal with at the college football level. So we'll see how it changes. Ewers will probably end up at a Texas school next year, but everybody just, to me, it's slow down. We rush to get these kids on campus so quick. Then we rush to get them in the NFL. As an adult, why would you be in a rush to get into adulthood? Adulthood's horrible sometimes. So, you got to enjoy being a kid, being a college student as long as you can. Now, if I was an elite 4 or 5-star athlete, I might have a different take on that, but I'm just a lowly writer.
you know, that machine they used to put you in of the Ohio lottery, you know, where all these dollar bills are flying around. You get to start grabbing them. Maybe that was the Price is Right. I don't know. But where you just got to get whatever you can grab. I asked Ryan Day the other day if he felt like he was standing in the middle of a tornado at the moment, you know, with everything going on. And he said, basically, yeah. I mean, there's so much for the college football coach, like you just said, has to deal with, like in season. You know, NFL teams aren't dealing with the free agent market in season, et cetera, unless they're just desperate for a player. But, I mean, it is crazy what college football has evolved to, correct?
Correct. And it's just one of those things that we'll see where it is in 5 years. I remember Day saying that at Big Ten Media Day. He said we may wake up in 5 years and not know what college football looks like. And that was over another round of realignment. So, yeah. Again, I think some of it will correct itself. NIL, the recruiting, having kids do that. There'll be a lot of cautionary tales, unfortunately, along the way. But it's still a pretty good product. And we'll see. I mean, Ohio State's always going to be in the mix and for national championships as long as they keep recruiting and doing the things they're doing. And, you know, next year, I'm sure, I don't know if you've been in the facility yet. I bet they have a countdown to the Michigan game going now.
It resets. Yeah, it resets, I think, maybe even on its own. Last question, I said that 4 times, but this is definitely it. Right now, as you look at it, who's your favorite to win the national championship? I'll check back with you later this month to see, to see if you've changed your mind. But go ahead.
No, I mean, it's hard not to pick Alabama and Georgia to win. I do think that Michigan-Georgia game is going to be really competitive. And it's one, though, Tim, that I can break it down all I want, but you have to see the first 10 to 20 plays because you have to see how is Michigan's offense reacting to the Georgia speed that you see on TV? What do they look like up front? Things that coaches see that I can't see. But I once I see it on the field for like 10 plays, like, okay, I've got a feel for this. But I think Georgia will win. I think Alabama wins. I think we get a national championship rematch. Without Mechie, becomes a little more interesting because Georgia had a plan that was working. And then once Alabama hit them a couple times, I think it became a psychological thn. And you've seen that with Michigan and Ohio State. They got real psychological real fast. And for whatever reason, Nick Saban is definitely in Georgia's head. And I would probably pick Alabama to win it all again, but I think it will be very competitive. And I think they may petition to move that game from Indy down back to Atlanta because all them Southerners are going to be up in Indianapolis and they're going to have to buy winter coats.
Yeah, maybe they'll let Brian Kelly do the pregame introductions of the players. with that fake accent.
I was waiting for that.
That'd be a good one.
You don't think yours.
Yeah, but you're right about Alabama.
The
thing that Alabama's got going for it that Georgia doesn't is Bryce Young versus Stetson Bennett. I mean, Alabama's got that big pass play as long as Jameson Williams is on the field, that threat every play. And that definitely – those were huge moments in that game. I mean, against Georgia over the weekend, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And they'll continue to – they'll have to scheme around that. I think Alabama will have to run the ball better if they have a rematch. I think Georgia will have to stick with their game plan as long as they can and be aggressive in the passing game. I think it'll be closer. And there have been rematches before. Florida State back in the 90s, LSU, Alabama. That was one of the worst BCS championship games ever in the rematch. But and the other team won. So the motivation goes the other side, but it'll be a fun game. And like I said, I think as much as Alabama-Georgia would be fun, Michigan-Alabama would be a lot more fun. Michigan-Cincinnati would be amazing.
Oh, that would be unbelievable.
We'll see if we can get to that, but I have my doubts.
I think in this crazy world of college football this year, this crazy season, that has a good chance of happening. I know the last weekend went chalk, but the next two are going to be, I think, extremely interesting. Hey, Bill Bender, thanks for doing Tim A Podcast again as an irregular guest, man. And I'm going to have you on again later in the month, if that's all right.
All right. Thanks so much, Tim. I'll talk to you soon. And check us out at Sporting News, man. That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I always check the Sporting News, especially when Bill Bender's byline's on the story. See you, man.
See you.
Hey, Awesome Ward. Always appreciate having Bill Bender on because, he does give us that little slice from the 30,000 feet, even though he only lives about a mile and a half away, right?
He does. He keeps his finger on the pulse there, as those pick guys love to do. Hey,
let me ask you this, though. Are you, now that things are kind of, the dust has settled to a certain extent, are you kind of a little bit excited about watching Ohio State, Utah? I mean, here's Utah. has never played in the Rose Bowl. This is a huge game for them. And right now you would sense just the momentum is with Utah going to this game, but there's still like 3.5 weeks before this game is played. But just what's your sense of being out there, of getting ready to go out there and to watch this game?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. Like, I feel pretty similar to the way we're talking about Ohio State players and wondering how motivated they are for it. And that maybe in a week or two, once it gets closer, once the pads are back on, that maybe you get a feel for how motivated the team is. Like, if Ohio State doesn't want to play a full barrel, 100% effort against Utah and a bunch of players opt out, then no, I wouldn't be excited to watch it. If they're treating it like an exhibition, I'll go watch Ohio State play anywhere and go learn about those young guys and all the stuff that goes with that. That's, what I live to do.
Yeah.
That's my job. So I love that part of it. But, I feel that right now, like, there's so many other things that are going on for Ohio State that is off-season mode when we're talking about transfer portal and potential coaching moves and NFL decisions and opt-outs. Like,
and early signing period. Go ahead.
Early signing period, in 10 days. So all those things are just like the 2022 stuff just is more, I don't know, it more meaningful than whatever happens on January 1. And I don't like that it feels that way. I think when you have these games that they should matter, but there's no actual stakes attached to it. It won't. If Ohio State loses, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be one of the top 4 talented teams in the country next year in a legitimate college football playoff and national title contender again. Like, it won't mean anything like that. And all these other moves that they have to make are just way more significant. And, I feel like there are real world stakes attached to those things that are going on that are separate from playing Utah at the end of the month.
Sorry, man. I started grinning when you started summing all this up, because basically 2022 is what they're aiming at this point. I mean, for the most part. And just remember one of your favorite coaches, Mike Loxley, talked about how Maryland got bowl eligible. And now next season starts now.
Right.
And I said, favorite was in quotes, ladies and gentlemen. You couldn't see it, but if you're listening on one of the major platforms, but yeah. Anyway,
that to be the case for all those games, Tim.
Yeah.
Like,
yes,
and for different programs, you treat it differently. Like, Wyoming wants to get to bowl eligibility, and the fact that Craig Bohl has been able to do that consistently is why he got a huge raise up to almost $2 million to coach at Wyoming in the Mountain West. Like, they're playing for different standards, and they will want to win that game and add a trophy to the case. Like, that's important to them. But I think part of the issue is that Ohio State is always in contention for these other larger goals, and they came short of all of them. And this isn't something that they would say at the start of the year that would mark a successful year to win the Rose Bowl, because it won't. But for Utah, it will. And so I think the other part of this, when we're talking about how motivated are they, like Ohio State, if they're not prepared to match that intensity,
yes,
then it might be ugly, and there might be something else for them to not be very proud about.
Exactly. I agree with you 158%. With that in mind, and speaking of Rose Bowl glory, let's move on to my next guest. You like that little segue?
That's perfect.
Rex Kern, man, 1968 Super Softs. He was as super as any of the Super Softs were that year when Ohio State won their national championship for Woody Hayes, his 3rd national championship. 3rd that we recognize from a wire service standpoint, right? But bottom line is he's got a book out, The Road to the Horseshoe and Beyond, that he co-wrote with Lee Carrier, and chronicling his rise from Lancaster to Ohio State and then beyond, and the lessons he learned, especially from Woody Hayes. So, but then he also has insight on what this current Ohio State team is going through, having gone to Michigan as a favorite and losing like that team he was with in 1968 and 69. They were number 1 in the country again, went to Michigan and got upset by first-year coach Bo Schembechler and that group, and talked about recovering from that and how long it takes, et cetera. It is a stunner. But without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Rex Kern. Ho, 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 ladies and gentlemen. You're looking for that special Christmas gift for your Buckeye fan out there, your Buckeye loyalist. Look no further than right here, right now. We've got a preview of one of the great gifts out there, The Road to the Horseshoe and Beyond, a book written by Rex Kern with Lee Carrier. Rex Kern, welcome once again to the Tim May podcast.
Tim, thank you. Very, very good to be with you, and good to see you again.
By the way, your publisher can send me that check, for promoting your book right off the jump there. You see what I'm saying? Hey, man.
Yeah.
I'm hearing this thing, for want of another term, sort of a runaway bestseller. They're having a hard time keeping it in bookstores, aren't they?
Yes, they are in the Columbus area. We've been overwhelmed with the results, and it's just really flattering. And I don't know what to say more than that, Tim. But it's been great. We have book signings there, and everything's just been great. The bookstore owners have just been as gracious as they could be. And so Lee and I have been really thrilled with the results.
What compelled you, Rex, national championship quarterback, starting quarterback 1968 with the Ohio State Buckeyes, really the season that kind of rekindled things after a little bit of a denouement there in the mid-'60s for Ohio State and Woody Hayes. But what compelled, I would call you the leader of the super softs, and of course, I think a lot of other guys in that group would call themselves the leaders too, but you were the quarterback, that's what matters. But what compelled you to get it down in writing, so to speak, about some of these great stories you've had over the years?
Well, Tim, it was really interesting how it got started. 2 years ago, Christmas time, our son and his wife, John Ryan and Heather, they're in Dublin, Ohio, gave me a gift called Storybook. And Storybook, they send you a question of the month or bi-monthly, and it's to write stories and put down your history for your kids and grandkids. Yeah. And I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. So, Tim, I started doing that. And after about 3 months, I said, wait a minute, it took me 7 years to write my dissertation for my doctorate. Man, I don't want this thing to last 7 years. And so I picked up the phone, called a friend of mine in Columbus there, Lee Carrier, who had written several great books about Ohio State basketball with Jerry Lucas and those guys. Yeah. And I said, Lee, would you be interested in writing down stories so we can chronicle and pass on to the kids and grandkids? He said, sure, Rex, let's have a go at it. I'd call Lee twice a week. We'd talk for 2 hours. He'd hear the stories. He'd write them, send them to me, see if they were accurate, and so on and so forth. And then Tim, it was right after the very first conversation, he goes, Rex, I'm an Ohio State fan, and I think you've got a bigger audience. And so he said, why don't we just keep going and let's follow this thing through? And the next thing I know, we had enough material, Tim, for over a 300-page book to tell stories, and you're going to get a kick out of this one. The largest chapter was the Woody Hayes chapter, and I would keep coming up with stories. And Lee said, hey, we got to cut this chapter down. I said, we can't cut the chapter down. He goes, okay, only one more story. And then one night I was across the street here in Denver talking to our neighbors. I remember you playing, but who were some of your great players on that team? I said, well, we had a bunch of them, but probably the name you would know the best is a guy by the name of Jack Tatum. And he goes, oh, yeah, I've always wondered about that. So I told him about this story of Jack Tatum, and I said, God darn it, I forgot to put that in the book. I got to call my author tomorrow. And so I called Lee, and Lee goes, Rex, man, I don't know if we can get it in. I said, we got to get it in. And so, those kind of things just kept popping up. And we we went on. We talked about my injuries. We talked about my faith. I became Christian. And so, Tim, I've also used it as a fundraiser. And when I was on the first book tour, I went to my high school, and the book retails for like $28 plus, tax. And they say if you put your autograph on, you get another $20. So, it's roughly $50.
Yeah.
So I say to my high school, I say, look, I'll come and I'll sign my book, and we'll donate all the money that we raised that night to the athletic department. And so we went down to Lancaster, and they paid $50 for the book, and we donated all the money to Lancaster High School Booster Club, and they raised just about $6,500. The next night, I went up to Columbus, and we had, a Fellowship Christian Athletes meeting, and we raised shy of $10,000.
Wow.
And so that's been the exciting part too, Tim, to be able to get back.
Yeah. Hey, Rex, you just touched on it though. I mean, this is what's interesting is, because I've got a buddy of mine, Jeff Snook. He's a good friend of yours too. Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
And he's done books.
Yes.
He's done books, with all kinds of guys around the country and stuff, and including Frank Beamer. Spent a long time with him, and Oklahoma football. He's done a bunch of books on Ohio State football and things. But, he and I talked about this before. It's like when you start talking, you're the subject of the book, like you said about the Jack Tatum thing, all of a sudden stories come back to you that you had basically put in way back in the back shelf, right, of your brain. And and wow, were they interesting? Well, give me another example of a story that just popped to the front suddenly that, maybe you had forgotten about or that you found very interesting that's in this book.
Well, in the Woody chapter, what is such a father image, but yet he can be a tyrant. And pardon me, what we kind of say in the book, or say about the book, that you can be the 12th man in the huddle, and you will hear the stories about Woody Hayes. But the one thing that I wanted to really emphasize about the old man was he believed in education. Tim, the first coach to ever recruit me in any of my three sports was Fred Taylor at Ohio State. And that was my goal, was to play basketball for Ohio State. And Fred also believed in education. And it was really interesting because after I retired from the NFL, I was having my second of now 7 back surgeries, and I had to retire. And at that time, I was working on my doctorate in athletic administration. And so going back to the airport after I flunked my physical, there were 2 other players there that were released that day. And they're sitting in the back of the bus saying, hey, I know this guy who knows that guy that we might be able to get to try out with the Cowboys. And, we're going to call them right away. And so I kind of scooted myself back, and I said, well, hey, what'd you guys graduate in when you were in college? And they looked at one another and they said, graduate? We played football. I said, well, didn't you go to class? And they said, no. Well, we were signed up for classes, but we never attended. And I thought, well, Woody said, as Woody and Fred said, if you come to Ohio State, you'll get an education. And Tim, when I worked very briefly there at the university, I ran a longitudinal study on Woody Hayes' graduation rate for the first 25 years. And he had a graduation rate pardon me,
It's okay.
the first 25 years of 87.6% of the varsity O football players who played for Woody graduated. But an amazing statistic, of that 86, another 37% went on to graduate or professional school.
Wow.
And so that comes through Woody, but it also comes through Woody when, when he would get upset at practice and he'd have a megaton. And we try to be honest and fair, but if your viewers pick the book up, I want them to read the very last paragraph of what I say about the old man. And it's dear and near to my heart.
Yeah, I know that, man. By the way, were those other two guys in the car with you who said they didn't get their degree, did those guys go to Michigan?
Yeah. If so, they had probably been in graduate school by that time.
Yeah. Hey, Rex, when you watched that game last weekend, a week and a half ago, was that tough to take? I mean, just give me your view. You guys had that great team in '68. Y'all beat Michigan, 50-14. Woody went for 2 because he couldn't go for 3. All the legends. And then the next year, Bo Schembechler up there, they pull the upset. Were you having a little bit of a deja vu moment there when you're watching this team struggle against Michigan this year with everything on the line?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it brought back memories that I think that game there, Tim, was the only one that we should have lost. We only lost 2, but that one, it seemed like Bo was in our huddle all day long. He knew the play before the old man had already called it. Yeah. And they played a wonderful football game, and they were the better team that day. But, I thought, oh, my goodness, this last game, they brought back not happy memories.
Well, what's the key, Rex? Because you went through it. Back then, of course, y'all lost that game. Y'all weren't going to get to go to a bowl game anyway. You weren't going to get to go back to the Rose Bowl because of the rules back then in the Big Ten and stuff. But what was the key to getting past that? If you could give the players on the current Ohio State team or who are going to be playing in the Rose Bowl, even though they lost to Michigan, which is interesting. What's I don't know, some advice you would give them about restoring their Dauber is the word I like to use.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I think Woody would always say the team that will win today will be the team who never quits and who makes the fewest mistakes.
Yeah.
And as I saw our Buckeyes play that day, it appeared to me our defense felt they were beaten. And it was from the very beginning, Harbaugh took the ball, went right down, scored. I don't know how many passes, not many in that series. He just buckled the chin strap and said, we're coming after you guys. And I think that they wanted it more than we did. And they proved it. And we have to lick our wounds. And I'll tell you, we licked our wounds after that game. And every day in practice, from that point on, whether we were playing a non-conference foe, we spent a little bit of time on those guys up north, and we were preparing to play them all season long. And in fact, our whole student body, Tim, I was telling people, golly, just this week, they said, well, yeah, how did you guys respond your senior year? Well, it was really interesting because not only were we getting prepared to play, the whole student body was. They were going around to our dorms and fraternities cheering us on like on Tuesday night, and the crowd started growing on campus, and they would go to the dorms, and Woody got wind of this. And I didn't put this. Hey, here's another story I didn't put in there. But anyway, Woody found out about it, and he goes, "Hey, I got to get the team rest." And Woody always said that Thursday night was your best sleeping night. And so anyway, he pulled us out of the dorms a day early, and we stayed at the Fawcett Center. And so about 10 o'clock that night, some of the younger guys and the seniors said, "Hey, Rex, we normally go out to get something to eat about this time." And he said, "Can you ask Woody if we can get something to eat?" And so Wagon and I went to Coach Hayes. We said, "Hey, Coach, the guys are hungry." And so there's a McDonald's right down from Fawcett Center.
Yeah,
he sends our not trainer, but our manager, Red Black, down, and Red walks into McDonald's. "I need 100 Big Macs and 100 French fries and 100 milkshakes as fast as you can get them." and Woody wondered why it took him so long to get all the food back.
Oh my God!
That was a sad day. I think what the Buckeyes need to do when they go to Pasadena is not get caught up in all the wonderful, Disneyland and the travel that they have to do out there, and get focused. Maybe Ryan Day will be like Woody and take him to the monastery the night before the game.
I was going to say, because Utah's coming for Bear, man. First time ever in the Rose Bowl. They're buying up Ohio State's allotment of tickets. Right as we speak, probably 10 more just went out the door. It's a big deal for them. You've got to, like you said, you got to match the intensity finally on January 1, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. For a team coming in that's pretty high, and we're not as high as they are.
Yeah.
We just need to get back to the fundamentals, and we need to do what we can do best, and buckle the chin strap, and don't give up, and play as hard as they can.
It is my hypothesis, Rex, that the fact that the Rose Bowl has become a consolation prize for Ohio State, you know what I mean by consolation prize.
Yes.
Like a raffle prize at the end when you didn't get to win the big prize. Where's college football headed right now, in your opinion? You're looking right now at all these tens of millions of dollars that are being thrown at coaches to jump from one program to the next. You got the name, image, and likeness deal, which you're paying attention. That Ohio State had a quarterback who signed early from Texas, and now he's already left, or he's entered the transfer portal, Quinn Ewers, and supposedly he's got NIL deals that are worth well over $1 million. He's played 2 snaps at Ohio State. Now he's moving on to find fame and fortune elsewhere. What are you worried about college football?
I think, am I worried about it? Yes. And I'm greatly disappointed in it. Some people have said, Rex, what do you think you would have got?
Yeah.
When you were in high school? And, I'm glad I came from Lancaster. I'm glad my dad was a barber. I'm glad he grew up as a farmer. I'm glad my mom was the same. And, it was just an honor to be recruited and have a college scholarship to get a degree that would last me longer than my NFL or my likeness image, because that fades pretty darn quick. And to me, it really separates. It becomes now an individual game instead of a team game. Mm-hmm. I mean, how can you, as a high school quarterback, come in with $1 million in your pocket and take 2 snaps and say, I'm going to go elsewhere because I'm not getting any playing time? Intercollegiate athletics is no longer intercollegiate athletics. It's the semi-pro, but now, hey, shoot, hey, Tim, hey, that likeness, that's more than my NFL contract.
I know, man.
Hey, I'm telling you what, there are more zeros on that than I got as an NFL player.
I was going to say, there's at least a couple of more zeros on there than you made as an NFL player. Absolutely. But that genie's out of the bottle now. It's law, basically, how this you can take. I mean, forget about NCAA rules. The NCAA kicked the can down the street long enough to where the state stepped in and made it laws that you're allowed to take advantage of this stuff. So, that there's no going back now, is there, Rex?
No, not at all. I just I don't know what it's going to look like because unfortunately the people who are going to get the big dollars are going to be quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, maybe defensive backs. And what about my backside tackle?
Yeah.
What about my center? If I'm going to get that kind of money, it's a team sport. I would set up a pool of funds to share those dollars with my teammates.
Yeah.
But I would venture to say that nothing happens like that. Yeah. I remember, Tim, when O.J. Simpson ran for over 2,000 yards. I was later a teammate of his in Buffalo. And Juice went out and bought the biggest rings and diamonds for his whole offensive line when he did that. And that showed a great deal of class. And it showed it wasn't only OJ that was doing all the work. It was guys like my teammate Dave Foley on our all Big Ten and national championship team that helped him do that. And I think if we can get that kind of contribution from the people who are making that money, or donate it back to the university to help pay for scholarships for guys to come back and graduate, that becomes an individual thing.
Yeah.
And I would hope they would do something like that.
Yeah. I was just, as you're talking there, I was just thinking, though, man, I was growing up in Texas when you were in 68, when you and those Super Softs did what y'all did. I knew who you were. You know what I mean? This is before ESPN. Yeah. This is before Twitter. I mean, I knew who Rex Kern was. I mean, in college with a name, image, and likeness deal, you could have made a fortune. Jim Stillwagon, all these guys could have made life-changing fortunes in their 3 years under Woody. I just keep thinking, how would Woody have dealt with a transfer portal? How would he, would that have run him out, or would Woody have adapted to the times? I mean, I think he was, except for that offense they ran in the middle of the middle 70s. I think he adapted. Yeah. He knew how to swing, right? I mean, to a certain extent with what was next.
Yes, but he also had the ability to stay focused on what the purpose was.
Yeah.
And his purpose, and it comes out in my book, Darrell Sanders, who was a great All-American for Woody. He was number one draft choice as a tackle. And Darrell basically said Woody's purpose was not to prepare you for the NFL, but to prepare you for life.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw Woody do. And we wanted to, kind of emulate what Woody would do. And I think somehow, some way with this likeness that Woody would, I'll say Woody would preach that, look, you need to give back. The old man always said, you can't ever pay back, but you can always pay forward. And if these kids take that attitude, and if they see their coach doing it, like we saw the old man doing it, you just do those things.
Yeah.
And that's why we revere him so much.
Hey, Rex, last thing, are you glad now as you sit back? I mean, I think you are. I think you're pretty proud of this book you and Lee Carrier put together. Are you glad you did it? I mean, there's one thing to talk about your legacy or people to talk about your legacy, but I think one of the great things is when you do a book like this, it makes you even more grateful and appreciative of some of the breaks you got, but some of the breaks you developed on your own, et cetera, right? I mean, that going through those hard knocks, because it was not easy being Rex Kern and that team of 68, those super softs either, right? I mean, like you said, 7 back surgeries, I think pretty much tells the story on a lot of the pain and anguish you go through to achieve stardom. But are you glad now you put this book together?
Well, Tim, I'm going to correct you. I'm not glad I did it. I'm humbled by it.
Yeah.
It's just really, I've already, Jim, I've got my Nancy in my dining room is full of letters and requests for the book. And some of the teammates, Glenn Mason, I got this great note from Glenn the other day.
Yeah.
And it just overwhelmed me. And Tim, one of my best friends on that team and today is Ron Masajowski.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Mace writes this glaring testimonial in the beginning of the book. And I put Mace on the inside cover of the book with what he said. And Tim, get these endorsements. There's a guy that played golf at Ohio State for us that, by the name of Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah.
Jimmy Tressel wrote the foreword.
Wow.
Jerry Lucas endorsed the book.
Wow.
Archie Griffin, Kirk Herbstreit, Steve Hayes, Jeff Kaplan, Gordon Gee, Ernie Accorsi was my general manager with the Baltimore Colts.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on, and it's very humbling to and bring me to tears with that kind of stuff. It's just really been delightful. Yes.
The Road to the Horseshoe and Beyond by Rex Kern with Lee Carrier's help. It always helps to have another guy typing it, man. Like when I retired from the Dispatch, I said, if I didn't have to write another story, man, my fingers are falling off, But man, those trips down memory lane, the great thing about you is, it's great when I have conversations with you, Rex, over the years. You talk about the past. You don't live in the past, but you talk about the past because of the lessons it can teach you for the future, right? To deal with the future. And I think that's what stands out more than anything, is like putting these experiences to work for you down the road, and the pay forward idea by Woody, a lot of people have adopted that now, but back then it was a novel, the way he said it was a novel approach, right? And it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I remember, Tim, when Woody passed away, he always talked about education.
Yeah.
And so I sent a letter out to our national championship team, and I said, we need to do something really special for the old man. And so Captain Dave Foley came up with the idea, because we were in our mid 30s at that time. We didn't have, a lot of free cash. We were trying to build, for our families and our families' education. And Duke came up and suggested, well, we could give cash or we could buy an insurance policy. And Tim, just from our football team in 1968, we raised $1.3 million for the Woody and Ann Hayes Scholarship Fund at Ohio State.
Wow.
And, that was a great tribute to the old man for what he meant to all of us. And I think that really exemplifies what he taught us. And so it was time to pay back for him.
Yeah. I was going to say, that statue outside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, that doesn't just stand for one man. That stands for the impact that man had and the people he coached had, it's so much more than one person.
Yes. Yeah, it sure is. Yeah. He there's lots of stories behind that one too.
Oh yeah.
That statue.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know how many, if they're going to build 2 or 3 more for Nick Saban at Alabama. He's already got one,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Hey, by the way, real quick before we go, that anecdote you said about sending the trainer down to the trainer down to the McDonald's to get those 100 Big Macs and 100 orders of fries. 100. Dude, I worked at Burger Chef my sophomore, junior, and senior years in high school in Lufkin, Texas. And, dude, we dreaded when a bus pulled up out front. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'll bet.
You just started slapping the burger meat on the tray, man. I mean, it was like, what I'm trying to tell you is there's 2 perspectives there, in a
That's
story
right.
like that.
That's exactly right.
There's the fry cook and there's the guy ordering. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Hey, Rex Kern, appreciate you, man. And a Merry Christmas to you. And I hope this book keeps selling big time. I'm sure it will. But I'm glad to have you on my podcast again, my man.
Well, thanks so much, Tim. I appreciate it. You have a Merry Christmas, too, and go Buckeyes.
I always enjoy my conversations with Rex Kern. You talk about a legend. That's Rex Kern in Ohio State football history. And it is pretty cool to touch base with these guys, isn't it? Awesome.
Absolutely. It's one of the best parts. So they know the game. The experience is better than we ever will. So we try to convey that through them a lot of times, but when they get to do it themselves, that's really the best way.
Yeah. And speaking of rising legends, man, my next guest, Jen Flynn Oldenburg, came back to her alma mater, Ohio State, in January of 2020 to take over the women's volleyball head coaching job. And she's done quite the job in the last, not even full 2 years. I mean, here they are, they're in the regional semifinals this coming weekend. Well, actually it's on Thursday, starting on Thursday against Georgia Tech in Louisville. And if they can win 2 more matches, they would get to return home. And not only is Ohio State playing host to the women's Final Four in volleyball this year at Nationwide Arena, but they would get to be playing in that. And wow, what a boost that would be. But even despite that, I mean, this team is the 9th seed in this region and is coming on big time. Has come on big time as this year has gone along. And without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Jen Flynn Oldenburg. And as promised, Jen Flynn Oldenburg joins the Tim May podcast. Coach, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah, I was going to say you're excited. I mean, these are exciting times for the Ohio State women's volleyball team. I mean, you guys are coming off a big first 2 round wins in the Covelli Center. I understand the place was jam-packed. People were screaming. And do you just get a sense about something you guys have got going on right now? Your building, et cetera? Just what's your sense coming out of that weekend?
Yeah, it's an exciting time for our program. Anytime that you get to the NCAA tournament and have a chance to host, I think it's good for the program to come out of that weekend with 2 wins against, two quality opponents, even better, and give us a chance to continue our season. But Covelli's a special place. I mean, I feel very fortunate that, one, I have the job, but 2, I get to come to work every day in Covelli Center, and then to have the place rocking like it was this weekend. It was awesome. It was great for our team. Yeah,
that place was a long time coming in Ohio State, athletic department. They wanted that kind of an arena for a while, just to showcase a sport like y'all's. And it really has come alive, hasn't it?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, winning helps, right? Winning helps in having that. But yeah, the community support, the student section. I mean, we have a lot of support here for Buckeye volleyball. I'm excited for the program, especially the team right now.
All right, you guys knocked off Howard. Poor Howard. You guys knocked off Tennessee. Poor Tennessee. Nobody's crying. I think you beat Howard in 3 straight sets. You beat Tennessee 3-1. Now you're headed to the regionals in Louisville, where you're playing Georgia Tech, number 8 seed. You guys are number 9 seed. Am I right on that? And
you got that right.
It's going to be Thursday afternoon, but it just ramps up from here, right?
Yeah, I mean, every round gets a little bit tougher. Georgia Tech's a great team out of the ACC. They were a 3rd place team, but don't let that fool you. They're pretty physical and they really emotional team. I think it's going to be a fun environment. We have Riley Rader from Louisville, so she has a lot of family and friends that are going to fill up the crowd. But we travel well. We're sending a bus down of students and our band and cheer. So it's going to be an exciting environment for our players to be in and a chance to advance.
You guys are 27-5. I keep saying you guys. I'm sorry about that, but I don't want to say you gals. You folks are 27-5. For the season, I think 15-5. What in the Big Ten? What a year to now, right? And I just wanted to just touch on this before we move on. What's just kind of really come right this season, especially for this particular team?
Yeah, I think it's the experience. Last season, playing in the spring was a little bit strange, but it helped us. And to turn around and do it again so quickly, but with a similar lineup, I think that played to our advantage. And I think what helps us is having that experience from last year translated into this year and being in big moments. I mean, nothing prepares you like the tournament, like the Big Ten season. So playing in the best conference in the country is huge for us. It gives us the experience, the battles every night, regardless of who you're playing, top to bottom. Big Ten's tough. So, I think we're in a good spot, and our team's ready to go compete on Thursday.
Here's a dumb question for you, because I've watched you guys a couple of times on television this year already, and there was one trying to remember. I think it was Minnesota. They had quite the crowd going, et cetera. But when you lose a big match, does that help you down the road if you follow my drift? In other words, the team kind of figures out where it lost its grip. Because now I think y'all won, 9 in a row at this point. Does that kind of help a team, like a volleyball team, find its grip on those last few moments of whatever a set that's critical?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly it could go the other direction too, and you can continue down the bad path. But I think if you address things from an emotional standpoint, but also a technical standpoint, I think those losses can help you. One example is Texas. They were number 1 all season, and they lose to Baylor late, and everybody's like, "Oh crap! They have a loss now. Like they're going to learn from that and be ready for the tournament." With us, I didn't expect to come out of the Big Ten unscathed.
Yeah.
We had a few more losses than I think we wanted, because I feel like some of those matches were in our grasp. But that last Minnesota match, our last loss, I think that was a frustrating one for our team. Yeah, and I think the coolest statement in the locker room after that one was, "Hey, we're tired of learning lessons. Like I feel like we've learned them. Like now let's start acting." And so from there, they're talking about actions meeting their words, and they've done that. The turnaround from that Thursday night match against Minnesota to the Saturday night match against Nebraska was huge. And we came out and handled Nebraska, and they're a very good team. So, yeah, I think you can learn from it. And I feel like our team has, and we're ready to roll.
Give folks an example of several people on this team. I mean, you can't name everybody necessarily, but just key components of this team, players that they've really come on, especially in this rush, these last nine matches.
Oh yeah, I want to name everybody because I don't want to leave anybody out.
I knew you would.
They're all important for our success, including the people on the bench. I mean, the energy they bring daily in practice and in matches. That's a tough job. So first of all, shout out to our bench because they're bringing it every day. But that it's Riley Rader, our middle, who led the conference in hitting percentage. She frustrates other teams and she loves doing it, by the way. Like that's like her goal in life, which is awesome. Yeah. Our setter, Mac Pedraza, is doing a good job running the show. Kylie Murs, our heartbeat of the team, the emotional leader. And when she's going, everybody wants to follow. And then we have, hitters that are going to take big swings. Emily Londot will take a big swing. Gabby Gonzalez, between Janasia Moore and Banya, who saw sometime this weekend, they're taking big swings on the outside. And I'm really going to name every player, just so you know. And that's Erica Davis in the middle, freshman for us, made all conference freshman team. She's filled a big role for us that we weren't sure about coming into the season. And then our super senior, we call her Grandma, Hannah Gruensfelder. She locks down the backcourt for us. So it's an exciting team. And we're just really, really excited to get going on Thursday.
Man, Coach, you've got a roster that goes from Utica, Ohio, or Sunbury and Utica to Serbia. Is that the reach of this program? Obviously you were named the coach in January 2020, inherited many of these players and stuff. But is that amazing to you? The global feel maybe of that locker room.
Yeah, I think it's pretty special. I think we're really fortunate to be in a state and region that has high level volleyball. When I played here back, let's put a year on it, but when I played back in the day, Ohio wasn't as strong. And now to have a roster with a bunch of Ohio kids, I think that speaks volumes for where we are in our region. But then the reach does go far. The recruiting is going to go across the nation instead of just in a certain area anymore. People know Ohio State. I feel fortunate that, we have that brand. But now it's more, now I want to be a part of that program because they're building something special there. And the players right now have done that.
Yeah. I was going to say, thanks to the Big Ten Network and other places, people can watch you play. It's not like the good old days. I'm not sure the good old days were the good old days, but for example, Erica Davis is somebody who really caught my eye. Just the energy. Was that a big time recruiting battle for Ohio State to get a player of that caliber out of like North Carolina, or how is she an example of the reach?
I think she's an example of the reach. I wasn't involved in her process. I'm fortunate, like you said, I inherited her. We didn't lose her when I got that job. But I think with her, she was one of those players that started a little bit later than others. And so I think the former staff did a great job and took advantage of that and got her excited about Ohio State. And I think that was a cool part as I transitioned into the job, was that a lot of these players, we're talking about Londot, Rader, that class, the class after her with Erica Davis and her classmates, they had the opportunity to go elsewhere if they wanted with a coaching change, and they all stayed. And I think that just shows the draw of Ohio State, what it means to be a Buckeye, and how much they wanted to be involved in this program. So I think it's pretty cool.
Were you aiming to get back in? Were you aiming to get into college coaching? Obviously, you're running not a club team. What do you call it in Pittsburgh? But but were you aiming to get back into college somehow, some way? What got you here, I guess?
I wanted to come back home, and I wanted to make sure that the program was in good hands, and I, as much as the former staff did a great job recruiting, unfortunately it comes down to wins and losses. And so when the job opened up, I put my name in the hat, and I was relentless in pursuing it and had people reaching out. But I was not, I'll be quite honest, and I've told people this, and it may scare recruits off or whatever, but I was not looking to get back into the game. I was content being home in Pittsburgh. That's where I'm from. My family's still there. We had a good thing going at Pittsburgh Elite, but I wanted something great for this program. And I'm not saying I'm not that person, but I do feel like with my background and just being a Buckeye myself, that I felt like I could put this program back on the map.
This isn't knocking anybody else, because there's been success here before, but what do you think you personally brought to the program? What that you can see right now, an imprint that you've put on it?
Part of it is just the I don't know, volleyball IQ in terms of how to play at a high level. I mean, I was fortunate that my career led me down that path where I could play at a high level and be coached by really great coaches. Yeah. So I think that the combination of just volleyball skill and the level we need to play at, and then those expectations that come along with it, and just the pride, you know, the I don't know, every day I'm like, I'm really proud to be a Buckeye. And I think that translates well into our student athletes because they know I did it, and I did it in their shoes, in the scarlet and the gray, on this campus, not in Covelli, but but I did it. And so yeah. I think that's what just fuels them is like, okay, she gets it. She's done this. She understands. And so I think that connection and that just fire really has refueled our program.
Yeah, you tell them you did it in the barn, right? St. John Arena. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty funny, man. I did want, to me, this is interesting, though, because like you said, when you played here, women's volleyball has just grown by leaps and bounds. I mean, because there are girls now who play it, as their major sport, right? I mean, it's like with women's basketball when it first started, it seemed like a collection of athletes, but now there are girls and women who have dedicated themselves to just like, guys used to do with football and basketball, et cetera. But have you noticed that just the elevation of the people you're recruiting now compared to like maybe young girls like 10 or 12 years ago?
Oh, it's a huge difference. And then take it back to when I played. I mean, I am tiny. Like I am so short and I wasn't big when I played. And now it's like, I don't even know if I'd play in the front row. It's very different. And even the type of physical athlete are playing right now is different than when I was coaching at Illinois 10 years ago. So, I think it's evolved. Our participation numbers in the youth generation, like it's just exploded. And so it's the highest participating, female sport. I think that's exciting for the growth of our game. But yeah, the athletes are coming our way. I think they don't like the physical nature of basketball, which is unfortunate in ways, but good for us. We're starting to get those kids that want to play volleyball, at a high level. So we'll take advantage of it. We'll take those athletes.
Well, what's interesting to me about volleyball in particular, I told you this before we started, I thought women's volleyball and women's softball are the two sports that can just really separate themselves in my mind if I see it on television, I'll watch it, and because they both have an energy to them, but especially women's volleyball, I can understand the attraction for women. My wife was a track athlete at Ohio State, high jumper way back in the late 70s, but, they either want to be participating or doing something else. They don't necessarily want to be riding the pine, as the way but everybody on the volleyball court is involved on every play. You know what I mean? And you rotate women through there and stuff. But am I right about the high energy aspect of it? Do you think has made it more attractive?
Absolutely. And it's you may not understand the rules, but it attracts your eye. If you have somebody that comes to a match, I've heard this a lot. Hey, I'm going to come check out your match. Oh, awesome. You're going to come back to more. And they're like, well, why do you say that? I'm like, we'll just talk after the match. And then they come and they watch and then they're like, wow, that's really exciting. Like, and it has, everything you need. It has a physical nature. It has, the team aspect. It has a little bit of finesse. I feel like it suits a lot of different people. And even, male and female, like it's exciting to watch. It doesn't matter, what gender you are, you're want to watch volleyball. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, last couple of things. When did you know this team was special? Did you know right out of the gate? I mean, because this does no matter what they do from this point on. I mean, this is a team that has achieved. Did you know it right out of the gate that you had the chemistry there, or did you see it develop as the year went on, the season went on?
Yeah, I would say that I'd even take it further to last fall. That's when I knew that we were building something special. I was hired in January 2020, like you mentioned. And then the pandemic hits and there's a shutdown and we can't play any volleyball at all. And so we're all separated. We're meeting by Zoom and all we have is really each other. And how do we build those connections with the new staff and I'm trying to figure out the dynamic of the team on 20 different screens. Like it was really strange, but we also scouted all the opponents of the Big Ten during that time. And that's how we started talking volleyball and gaining that knowledge. And I think when we came back in August and started playing, they're like, oh, this makes sense now. And so it was like started to click. And then we shut down again because, we weren't playing until the spring. So we went back to individual type of practices. And then when we came back again and had our first team practice where we could play 6-on-6 across the net, and it was a really high level. I mean, for the first practice where we were able to do that since March of 2020, and now we're November of 2020, and we're playing at a high level. I think that's the like aha moment that I will remember. Not that I was surprised by it, but the players, they were looking around going, we're playing high level volleyball. And I was like, yeah, like this is what is called trusting the process. And it was just like mind blowing for them. And so, I think that translated well into the spring season. And then I think specifically for our team, it was the Washington match early in the season, second match of the year at Nationwide Arena when we came out to play. And I think, it was surprising in some ways just that early, like how well things were clicking, especially with a freshman middle and then Mia Grunzi, who didn't spend a lot of time on the court for us last year at all. She's on the left for us. I think that was the start of it. And then it was just each week we built and built and built. And we had some setbacks, like you had mentioned, those losses. But then it was like, okay, how do we regroup and refocus and get going? And they've done a great job of that. So yeah, I kind of knew they would be special, but it's fun to see it translate and then translate into wins and success.
Didn't want to leave this out, ladies and gentlemen. Ohio State is the host school for the Final Four this year. Coach Oldenburg is trying to move her troops through Louisville this week so she can come back home and play in Nationwide Arena for the Final Four. That's got to be exciting to know your city is hosting the Final Four. And obviously you want to be a major part of that, correct?
Yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. There's a couple of tough teams ahead of us. So yeah. we got to go day by day. I mean, that's been the mantra, from the beginning of the season, even going through the Big Ten season. Can we take this match by match? And that's the focus we have going on this week. Of course, we know what's happening next weekend, and we would love to be a part of that, as all 16 teams are right now that are getting ready for the Thursday matches. But right now our focus is on Georgia Tech and how we're going to, game plan in order to take them down on Thursday.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but the Covelli Center, several games in there this year with the packed crowd, and then knowing your city is hosting the Final Four, that just tells you there is an upswell, at least locally, for what you and your players are doing, right? I mean, in other words, you're not just playing in a vacuum, so to speak.
No. There's a ton of clubs here in town in this region, and they're good and they're excited about volleyball, and to see the younger generations at our matches, just, excited for Buckeye volleyball. I think that's pretty special. All
right. Last thing, you touched on it earlier, talking about the physical play, that y'all play with, and that the Big Ten shows, volleyball players aren't allowed to run into each other or tackle each other, but this line of scrimmage, which is that net, can be very intense at times and stuff. And like you touched on, to take it to that next level, you've got to have people who are aggressive, who are getting after it, not afraid to get a ball in the face, right? You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about this sport and the way it is really, I think, elevated in the last 10 or 15 years. But it is quite a physical game when you're down low watching it, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the speed of the ball, people diving all over the floor, just the big time blocks that you see. But then when that happens, we get that stuff like our kids are shoving each other, like there is a physical content, like a component of the game. So yeah, it's a really fun, I think, fan friendly environment. So anytime you get a chance to watch volleyball at a high level, higher than even you're used to playing, go do it, because it's something special. Yeah.
Coach Oldenburg, I really appreciate you joining the Tim May podcast. This was special. And, good luck this weekend and the next weekend in the Final Four. I'm going to get that little shout out in there.
Yeah, we'll see. One match at a time here, Tim. But thank you for your time. I appreciate being on here.
Now you're sounding like Ryan Day. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know how it's one serve at a time, actually, or one return at a time. We do say that. One contact. Yeah, like your libero was talking about, the aggressive nature you guys are playing with. I mean, it's, you got to feel good about the energy going into this weekend, though, right? Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be ready. Thank you. Thank you. Boy, I really enjoyed that conversation. And, awesome. As you pointed out, you covered women's volleyball at one point at the University of Wyoming, and it's amazing. Even, you're getting on up there in years a little bit, aren't you? You're not in the 40s yet, but you're getting on up there. But it's amazing the leaps, pardon the pun, that women's volleyball has made just over the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, without a doubt. And spent a good amount of time at Tennessee covering some of those women's volleyball teams that are very talented and very competitive with the SEC teams. A lot of times they were measuring themselves against Big Ten programs and, hoping to get over the hump and win national titles down there that are pretty, more regularly associated with the Big Ten or the Pac-12 historically. When Tennessee was able to make a Final Four run, remember the excitement of there. They're never going to draw massive crowds, but the 2, 3, 5, sometimes 7, 8,000 people that would be there really into it because it is exciting to watch. And these women are incredibly athletic. As you said, just from when I started watching it or when you started watching it to the things that they can do now, it's the real deal. I mean, they are doing some impressive stuff out there.
I think the crowds that they packed into the Covelli Center this year for the women's volleyball team, I mean, that is a perfect setting. I don't know if you agree. I just think that was a long overdue venue for Ohio State athletics, and as I said to the Coach Oldenburg, I said, when she played here, she played in the barn, otherwise known as St. John Arena. And now they've got this really nice arena. Obviously, the men's wrestling uses it, et cetera, but that has really done a lot for those sports, hasn't it?
Yeah, that place is really great.
I
mean, it's a perfect venue to see. Like I said, those crowds are never going to compete with the Horseshoe, obviously. But for, there's going to be a line of people for some of those big time events, whether wrestling and volleyball. The diehard fans for that fan base have a perfect place to go watch. And when it's full, I mean, it's rocking.
Yeah. When there's 2,000 people in a 4,100 seat arena, they make a lot of noise. When there's 4,100 in a 4,100 seat arena, you got yourself going. You got what's known as a bandbox, right?
That's right.
Hey, speaking of bandboxes, I keep getting this distinct feeling that the Rose Bowl could be a bandbox for Utah, the way Utah fans, I remember I tweeted out the link, for Ohio State people to be able to at least get in line to buy tickets. And boy, I was stunned by how many Utah people retweeted my tweet. So showing their fans how they can get tickets if in fact the Utah allotment is soaked up by these fans. They're going to the Rose Bowl for the first time. It could really be an interesting crowd situation out there for Ohio State, couldn't it?
Yeah. And, that's, again, part of it. I can understand why, fan fatigue and this one doesn't matter. There's so many Ohio State fans we know that wait and save and are so excited, to go to these postseason destinations. Well, I mean, it's pretty expensive to get to LA right now.
Yes.
And there are a lot of trappings for the Rose Bowl that make it not the best experience for fans. You've joked about this with me in the past and how relatively little I enjoy the rest of what goes on with the Rose Bowl. But I know many other people that, friends, family, acquaintances that have been out there and just the headaches that come along with getting to it. So I would understand why, if that's the choice and it's really expensive and it's not easy just to make it to, the sunset there in San Gabriel Mountains and that appeal, like sitting it out. But Utah has not dealt with that. Like they don't know if the traffic is difficult or if you can actually get to the parade and go see the game and all those other things. Like they're excited for it. They've worked to make it to get that recognition as a Pac-12 champion and be taken seriously and not just some token addition from the Mountain West. And that's going to be a party for them. And I think that'll be tough for Ohio State to match. That's the challenge that we talked about. Can you find that fuel to handle this and approach the game the same way? Because I don't think that they can get to the level that Utah will be at for that level of excitement.
Yeah, we're talking intensity, ladies and gentlemen. And plus, what Utah else got going for it? It beat a team that Ohio State couldn't beat this year. It beat Oregon. And not only that, he beat Oregon twice and really beat the hell out of them the second time. I mean, those Utes. What? Did you say Utes? Yeah, I said Utes. Huh?
What's a Ute?
Yeah, what's a Ute? What's a Ute? I think people are going to find out. But speaking of that, you think Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson will find out what a Ute is? What's your take?
I tend to think that Chris Olave will play in this game, that with his legacy, not wanting to leave on a loss, his competitiveness, the fact that the game is pretty close to his backyard, and I assume tons of his family being able to go see that game, his last one in Ohio State uniform. I think that'll probably be too much for him to walk away from. Garrett Wilson, I think we can all agree, is the most likely or be the starting point where you say this guy has nothing else to prove. He's going to most likely be, I think, the first wide receiver drafted next year, next spring. Maybe he doesn't need that send-off in the Rose Bowl. I don't know that there are a lot of other obvious candidates for that, but I also understand where things are going, and it's far more common and accepted for these guys to protect themselves ahead of the draft. So there may well be company. We don't know for sure if Garrett Wilson will or will not. He's committed to that one way or the other at this point. None of the Buckeyes have, but wait a minute.
The only reason I threw those two names up there is because it's on everybody's lips, locally. That because everybody, like, they get caught up in the doom and gloom of the aftermath of the loss at Michigan, and who cares now? These guys may care more than you think, right?
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying Garrett Wilson has come a long, long way as a mature teammate, leader, along with Olave in that wide receiver room, and he's got a chance to add to some pretty impressive statistics. I think the other part of this that, if you make a play in the Rose Bowl, and even if we're saying that there's not true stakes attached to it, I've said this in other places, and I said this on Sunday when we talked on Rapid Reaction. Given what we know about the audience for these college football playoff games on New Year's Eve, I think Ohio State, with their draw, we know that the fans are still going to watch, even if they aren't worried about maybe the outcome or the stakes or any of that other stuff. They're going to watch. The traditional time slot is still there. Everyone's still going to be watching college football on New Year's Day. They always do. So, this could be the most watched bowl game.
Yeah.
And, you make a big play there the next day, who knows what offer pops into your inbox for name, image, and likeness. I mean,
yes,
you could have a $1 million day just because you make a big catch or game-winning play in the Rose Bowl. Or, hey, maybe whoever the current sponsor, Capital One or whoever, maybe they just hand out a check to the player of the game. Maybe they should do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's going to be opportunity there like that. Now, again, the calculus is, if you're Garrett Wilson, is that one day worth it compared to your career? Hey, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Let me ask you real quick before we get hypotheticals. I don't want to get into this. I want to have this conversation next week or the week after about what I see coming for college football, and I don't like most of it. You know what I mean? Eventually somebody's going to run out of money. That's all I'm saying. The tap is going to get cut off. It may get cut off when apathy really sets in, but when you have a player playing for this team one year and playing for this other team the next, and just when you've really invested personally into really wanting this guy, all of a sudden he's playing against your team and stuff, that could bring some problems for college football. I really truly believe, but the Rose Bowl and ABC, ESPN, who are broadcasting it, they're going to be promoting the Rose Bowl, just like they promoted the Big Ten championship game, just like they promoted the game. Should the players whose name, image, and likeness, or whatever, shows up in their commercial, should they get a cut? Should they get a little fee? What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, if what you're saying, and you alluded to it with the cutting the tap off, if Mel Tucker is going to make $96 million after one good season. The guys who helped him create that probably deserve a lot more money alongside that. It's crazy how all this is working. We'll save the conversation for another podcast. But,
yes.
Coaches have somehow actually emerged from all these changes with more leverage than before.
Crazy.
And that is wild. When you're like Lincoln Riley, all right, well, I'm going to take this player, this player, this player, this player. They're coming with me. And also the recruiting class, they're probably all going to decommit and they're probably going to go to USC. But now you have to pay them these exorbitant amounts of money. And that is not going to last, especially now in the bowl system, which I felt has been antiquated for a long time. It's not just a sudden realization that a lot of these other games don't matter that much for most of the big time programs. But if you're going to stage an exhibition, like, you don't generally ask for volunteers to come perform it. So, I know that I'm opening up a whole nother can of worms to dig into, but
yeah, keep the lid sort of on it, but give us a preview. Go ahead.
Well, the reason that these games exist is because of the sponsors paying the money to stage the exhibition games.
Correct.
So, and I know that they already were getting something. There was already a recognition about that when you say, oh, here's the $500 or whatever, your PlayStation, get to go to the gift suite. They were already giving them, something that was outside of the normal bounds of college football amateurism, quote unquote. But, if you want 20 million people to watch the Rose Bowl because you were able to land Ohio State and Utah for that game, and then you sell off the rights to 10 different sponsors, $500 probably doesn't cut it for what they might be risking to do it. So let's just think about that part of it, especially if you want to keep an incentive for players not to opt out.
A trip to the gift suite, man. A trip to the gift suite. Yeah.
And that was also why I thought, 3 guys might not go into the transfer portal the very first week of the offseason, because now you don't get to go to the gift suite.
Exactly. And by the way, is there more aptly named bowl? I think it is still called the TaxSlayer.com Bowl, the Gator Bowl. Yeah. I mean, hopefully the players get free software so they can now do their taxes based on their NIL income. That would be they should be taking advantage of that, but I'm not sure. I think we're really in for an interesting era in college football. I'm going to leave it at that. We'll talk about that some other time. Awesome. Hey, one last thing. What is one quick before we go? Do you expect Ryan Day to make any staff changes between now and the Rose Bowl? He was very coy. Coy may not be the right word. Very tight-lipped about things the other day when we got to talk to him. There's got to be some things in the works. There's a lot of machinations going on around the country, guys grabbing coordinators, guys grabbing assistant coaches. Brent Venables going, defensive coordinator for a long time at Clemson, going back to Oklahoma to be his head coach, and who's he taking with him, et cetera. Do you get the feeling Ryan Day's got to be making moves sooner rather than later, or should he wait till the dust settles?
I think unless his hand is forced that a candidate he knows that he wants or has maybe even talked to already, unless he has to do that immediately, I don't think that he has the desire to do that until after signing day.
Yeah.
That's when a lot of dust settles. And really, because people have asked me that a number of times, especially on the message boards at Letterman Row as part of the On3 network, well, what's taking so long? Why wouldn't you want to do this right away? Part of this is that I know there are dominoes falling with the head coaches moving, but by and large, most of these assistants are under contract. They're trying to finish off their jobs, whether that's a bowl game, whether that's a recruiting class for their current bosses. Not a lot of them are in position to leave at the drop of the hat just because Ohio State's season ended, or just because Penn State's regular season ended, or whoever else. So,
right.
And a lot of them can't move because of their contracts until some of those buyouts and payouts and all that stuff is handled. So, unless something transpires that somebody jumps in there with a huge offer and they don't want to wait till signing day, I don't think Ryan Day will respond until after that, and then we'll see what happens. But, you asked the first part, and he didn't answer it directly on Sunday. Will there be changes? Yeah, there's going to be an outside hire for defensive coordinator. That's going to happen.
Yeah. as I said to Mike Yurchik, sometimes you need new pollen on the flower, right? Of course, I didn't ask him exactly that same way.
That's right.
That's still one of my favorite questions ever that I asked, and I wished I had. I don't know if I wished I had it back or not, because we all had a good laugh about it. But anyway,
what a coincidence that you're bringing up an Oklahoma State coach as a candidate for Ohio State.
Yeah. Crazy. It's a crazy world we live in, ladies and gentlemen. Austin Ward, thanks for joining me again in the cockpit of the Tim May podcast. And the great thing about what's going on is there's a reason for a podcast almost every week now. When it comes to college football, something stupid, queer, weird is happening. Tens of millions of dollars are being thrown out, not thrown out, thrown at people to make changes, et cetera. And I don't know, we're going to come back in one of these next podcasts and talk about that. Are you game for that?
Absolutely.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, until next week at this time, this is Tim May for Austin Ward. We'll see you then.